All right, guys. So today we're going to cover the last of the main substantive topics for HKS. This one's going to be on writing letters of recommendation, which you can imagine is a very important part of the process, plus the resume. Again, two very important parts that I want to make sure that we really kind of smash out of the park because they're very, very important to the application. The resume being the catch-all that kind of grabs everything together and really kind of lays it out for the school. And the letters of recommendation, which are obviously mission critical in terms of providing another opinion outside the scope of what you can provide that helps them better understand your candidacy as a student. Okay, so let's get into it. We're going to focus, I think, a lot more on the letters of rec, but we're also going to touch on the resume. So let's get into it. My background and why I'm qualified to provide you with this information, other than having gone to some of the best schools in the world, thank God, right there. As you can see, UCLA, Berkeley Law, Cambridge in England. I also went to the Kennedy School myself in 2016-17. Was a fellow, so I received a full ride scholarship that year, and then was on the selection committee the subsequent years to help with selecting the fellows for that scholarship or that fellowship. So it was a very, very involved process, and one that I very much enjoyed because I was able to understand what the admissions committees look for and what the school look for in terms of candidates. I was also on the Center for Public Leadership Alumni Council, as you can see right there, which I thought was a very, very important way of getting involved in the process itself. And then finally, I founded Right Track Admissions in 2008, where we've been working with clients from across the world. But more importantly, in terms of this approach, is that because of what we had created and gone through over the last 18 or 17 years, that's how I was able to get to the Kennedy School, because I was able to understand the hacks that allow you to get in there. And to that effect, what I did is I put all of that together into a comprehensive guide, which is the only guide that exists on the Kennedy School for aspiring HKS applicants. Everything from obviously, is policy school right for you? How the Kennedy, if the Kennedy School is right for you, not just if policy school is right for you, but if the Kennedy School is right for you, what are alternative programs? How to make your profile really stand out, how to write the best application essays, and kind of everything all the way through how to succeed as a student. All right. Let's go into the resume. Here, really you want to start with just kind of brainstorming everything that you've accomplished in university as a profession, right? So, and we talked about this in the previous episodes where we spoke about how a student should start thinking about designing and creating their profile, right? So I think that's very, very important from that process. And so what we've done is we talk about brainstorming and brain dumping all that information into one location. So you have, and again, at this point, if you are applying to the Kennedy School, you're probably already going to have had some form of resume created. It's not like you're in high school. So you would just need to take that resume and tweak it from a purely professional resume into an academic and a little bit professional essay. Obviously, if you're a mid-career, you're probably going to want to put more time into the professional aspect of it because you've had more experience as somebody who's an MPP. But nonetheless, you want to at least capture that into the resume. And we'll talk a little bit about how long it should be and so forth. But you want to brain dump everything that you've done and keep that as a consistent list, and then sharpen and focus it into the resume itself. You just don't want to list everything and just kind of like academics and honors and just dump it in there. Obviously, you want to have it kind of put into a proper format. And then kind of really what we want you to think about and stand out is note the experience that demonstrate initiative, compassion, creativity, innovation, analytical thinking, leadership, all those kind of things, which HKS really, really likes, right? We talk about this in the 6 C's, which we've mentioned, I believe, in previous conversations. I'm probably always going to forget the 6th. But I can tell you from memory, you've got capability, which is obviously how academically astute you are. You've got compassion. You've got collaboration, right? So compassion in terms of volunteer experience is what you do to give back to the community. A sense of collaboration, how you work well with teams, right? You've got a sense of creativity, how you solve problems from a multitude of perspectives, right? And the importance of that. You've got a sense of commitment, in terms of the grit, the desire to kind of really focus and execute and complete your work so that it really is able to kind of go the distance. And like I said, I always will forget the sixth. So we've got compassion, capable, committed, creative. Oh, and the one that I love the most, curious. That's your sixth. And curious is really where it shows that you have this desire for lifelong learning, desire to constantly improve and constantly adapt. Those are the 6 C's that we constantly keep trying to socialize, because those are the ones that keep you future ready. Whether you're earlier in your career, or like myself, middle of my career, or someone even later in their career, if you exhibit those 6 C's, that's what these schools are going to look for. Someone who has those core skills. And that's what you really want to kind of showcase in the resume here. So we start off with the resume because, or we can call it CV, because with education, because this is obviously an academic program. So you start with the university degrees, honors, achievements, select classes if they're applicable to the degree itself, for the MPA or MPP, activities in the academic setting. You may ask me, well, like I took this course, or I didn't complete my degree, or I transferred. Put the transfers and anything that's in a university setting in the education setting. If you've got a course like Coursera or Khan Academy or Maven or any of those, you can leave those underneath us, like I have here, certificates, or you can even call it certificates, licenses / courses, select courses, whatever. You can have it down here. All right. But ultimately, the education is going to be at the front, and you're going to be basically saying kind of like your degree, your GPA, if it's noteworthy. If it's not noteworthy, then don't have it there. They're going to find it in your transcript anyway. No need to put it on your resume. If it's noteworthy, then you can put it in there. Any honors, any things like that, you can put it underneath the education activities and activities that you did when you were at school if relevant. Then after that, you have your professional experiences, your titles, your dates, your location. Sometimes they ask you for how many hours you put into it, especially if it's a part-time position. Otherwise, you can write full-time or part-time in there if you want to. And then if necessary and if relevant, you can write in the summary of the company. So in one sentence, you say, for companies that are not really well known, you can kind of put it in there where you'll say, Acme International, a global consulting firm with 300 employees in 20 different countries with an ARR of X, if you want to put like some financials there. All right. Next, you want to put in the jobs and the achievements. So you have the roles, job roles, and the achievements itself. The achievements is mission critical because it shows impact and measurable results. Now, for the Kennedy School, they also want you to put in any gaps you have in professional experience. So imagine you took 6 months off. You want to kind of put in there. And how do you put it in there? You would do it so that, and how we did it recently with a client is you just say between this and this, you can say improved professional development, volunteered in X, pivoted to new career transition or whatever. You can kind of put it in there and put the timing, right? And then we'll address it if necessary in the optional statement. Then, as I said there, I highlight again, leadership, impact, teamwork, hard and soft skills. You really want to bring those up. Plus, again, those 6 C's that we just mentioned. Volunteer experiences will be the next section. Titles, dates, hours, mission of the organization, your responsibilities, again, emphasizing impact, teamwork, leadership, what change you made, okay? Super, super important. Then I would have an activity section, which is a little bit more of a catch-all to kind of capture things that are not in the academic section and not in the professional setting. So again, you can kind of piece that in there. Things like not necessarily volunteer, but maybe you're teaching. Maybe you did some advisory work that really is not professional, that you'd want to put in your professional part, but just kind of general advisory, things like that. I'm trying to think of other examples of activities. I would say volunteering at a certain organization, but it's things that don't really nicely fit within professional education and volunteer. You kind of capture it there, and always emphasizing leadership and impact. Then finally, the final section, I would say skills and interests. So these are really relevant to you. You don't want to say cooking, traveling, reading. You really want to dig into it, like 19th century pulp fiction for like reading. Cultural travel to least visited nations, yoga, Bikram yoga, whatever it is. You want to kind of make it really. And then what I did, like I said, fitness, I didn't just write fitness and running. I talked about any half marathons or marathons I was involved in. Any type, I talk about, I think another one about travel. I mentioned the countries I've been to, maybe the channel that I have that I've created on YouTube. So I just kind of put it in there as an artifact. So those kind of things are really kind of hone on it. And from the skills side of things, you want to talk about linguistic skills typically, and technical skills are the two ones I usually see people do. So computer skills, for example, you'd put in like Python or whatever, especially if it's relevant to your degree. MPP, MP, probably less so. But again, if there's something that you're going to be involved in, which is like maybe like working for the Census Bureau or something that you want to do that's related to economics or population statistics or something, you can kind of put the technical program that you've worked on to develop that skill. Other possible sections, any publications. So I have that section, for example, publications, not just blogs, but publications that are like, legitimate places that you've published in. Certificates and licenses. As a lawyer, I put in the fact that I have a bar in 2 different states. So I put it in there. And when I got the bar exams, I put in there certificates, like I took a class on AI. I took a class on project management. I would put it in there in the certificates, the organization that you got the certificate from, and when you got it. Another one was speaking engagements. I put select speaking engagements, and then I would put a link, if there's a link, where it's on YouTube or something like that. That's great, because then they can always take a look at it and get a sense of it without having to kind of Google you. All right. So that's a really good overview summation of the resume. If you've got about 2-3 years of experience, I would say your resume should be about 2 pages max. If you've got, let's say, 10 years of experience, I could say 3 pages. I don't think you'd really want a resume more than 3 pages. All right. Okay, good. And as a question, how far back do I have to go in terms of education? How detailed would I have to be in terms of interest? I would say for the Kennedy School, do not go to high school in terms of that far back. I would just say college, and that's it. And how did it have to be in my interest? I would say it should be 1-2 lines maximum, a bullet with 2 lines, right? That's it. And it really should be what makes you unique, and be specific. Don't just say things that like everybody else would put. Like the ideas, they'll be like, wow, this guy's got really cool interests, like skydiving, or I don't know, collecting stamps, or something that really is kind of, that's interesting, because it just kind of shows another aspect of you. All right, let's jump into the letters of recommendation. So why are they important? Well, they provide an external perspective to validate your profile, strengths, and candidacy. So they need to kind of fit seamlessly with what you have in the different parts of your application. Okay. So they just basically corroborate what you've already been talking about from that other person's perspective. Identifying recommender quality. So you need to be as careful as possible in terms of who to ask, in terms of their skill sets that they will bring to the table. You don't want to find somebody be like, oh my God, this person's the greatest, they love me, but they are, for example, inaccessible. They just don't respond to emails. So you don't even know if they've submitted their, they've submitted your recommendation. So first thing I would say, these are great skills to look for within a recommender. If they're familiar with the graduate admissions, which is great, especially if you get it from let's say an academic professor, then obviously they've gone to grad school, so they'll know about what grad schools are looking for. Someone who writes well, even though I think that's slowly but surely changing with AI. The schools can't stop a recommender from using AI to write your recommendation. So I think people are using it, unlike for students, which they can check and they can hold that against you. But for letters of recommendation, I don't know if they can. I mean, if it's to the discretion of the recommender. But ideally, you have someone who can write well from the heart, authentically, that they write and they don't use AI to write your recommendation. So somebody's a good writer that can actually articulate. So if you're getting a recommendation from somebody who doesn't speak English, and they submit it, that's a disaster, because they're probably not going to be as articulate to really describe the nuances of why you're so great. And the school is going to say, this is an English speaking program. You should have got a recommender who can write very articulately about how great you are. And if they can't do it in English, which to no fault of anyone's own, then you just get it translated, an official translation of it. We already mentioned accessible. You don't want to be chasing down a recommender that may or may not submit it in time because they're just absent-minded or just not available. And you want to find someone who's just excited when you approach them about this. They're like, oh yeah, I would love to do this. Oh, I'm honored to do this, right? Because that's also going to reflect in the letter of recommendation. So these are some key qualities that you want to look for in terms of identifying the recommender. That's how you do it. And then in terms of who to select, these are some of the people that you want to be thinking about. So academic, obviously, somebody who's a professor, ideally, but that knows you very well and knows your academic aptitude and prowess. Even a thesis advisor, doesn't even have to be a professor, but a thesis advisors and so forth. Now, you may be asking me, oh, I'm a mid-career and I graduated 15 years ago and there's no way I can find anybody still available that would remember me. Then you want to put that in your optional statement as to why you didn't get an academic letter of recommendation. But that's only for mid-careers. Everybody else, especially for MPPs, you've got to get letters of recommendation. They're academic. In fact, if you're an MPP, I would recommend 2 academic and then 1 other one that can fall from this list, or at least the next 2. Professional, right? Supervisors, even a client that you've worked with that knows you well, that knows your prowess, that knows how you've evolved, you could use those. But a supervisor, you don't want to get a colleague, someone that would be deemed biased. Even a client could be potentially deemed biased because they're your client, so they don't want to screw up the recommendation for you. But let's just say you own your own business and you are the top dog, so there's no one else who could write the recommendation from you from a supervisory perspective, then that's where you'd get a client. But if you work in a structured job, then I would go with a supervisor. You do not want to get a colleague or someone that is ranked below you in terms of hierarchy, because then the school will feel that person is being forced to write a good recommendation for you because you supersede them in the professional hierarchy. You've got then the extracurriculars as well, mentors, advisors, coaches. Let's say that you are volunteering, you've got a mentor, you've got an advisor for volunteer experience, or an advisor for whatever it would be that you're doing from an extracurricular perspective, a coach if you played sports, and I would say at the highest level of sports, not just basic sports. I think that's where you would get the extracurricular. So the reason I added those 2 is because for MPPs, I'd say 2 academic and then 1 professional or 1 extracurricular, depending on which one can write the better letter of rec. If you are a mid-career, obviously 1 academic and 2 professional. If you can't do that, then I would say 2 professional and 1 extracurricular. For mid-careers, probably 1 academic, 1 professional, 1 extracurricular, or 1 academic, 1 professional, or 2 academic, 1 professional if you're an MPA. And then for development, MPAID, definitely you want to err on the academic side, so 2 academic and 1 professional. Just some mixes there. Current student alum, this is kind of like the ripcord, break in case of emergency. If you cannot find another person, you could also get someone who knows you well that's also an alumni of the school. That probably could also be helpful to you. Current student, I really would not advise against it unless, again, they were your supervisor or client or something to that effect, and they would write a letter for you, and it would still fall underneath one of those other categories. One way to gauge the right recommender is to meet them in person and get a temperature check. If you're not finding them to be excited, if they're not accessible, all the things that we spoke about, then I wouldn't pursue it, because it really can come back to bite you if the person does not write you a good letter recommendation. And again, I say that as another pro tip. Someone who speaks well to your IQ. So academic would speak well to your IQ. The professional would speak well to your EQ. Maybe an extracurricular would speak well to your AQ. AQ being adaptability quotient. Someone who's able to have lifelong learning. Someone who's always excited and curious to grasp different concepts and adapt to the different environments they have, which can come from a professional or extracurricular perspective. All right. So that's who to select. Who not to select. Do not ask a family, friend, or coworker. We talked about that, right? Family and friend, because they'll be biased, and so it would lack the veracity that you would want in a letter that the school will take seriously. Coworker, especially someone on the same level as you or hierarchically lower than you on the hierarchy totem pole, because then they again feel compelled to write you a good letter because they don't want to get in trouble. Don't ask someone you aren't 100% sure of your support. We already talked about this, right? In terms of that temperature check. If you feel that they're lukewarm or even slightly hesitant, oh, I'm too busy, or ooh, I don't remember your profile that well, but I guess I could do something, then I wouldn't go with them. And the last one's very important that people tend to ignore. Let's imagine you can go to your CEO of a big company and get a letter of rec from them, or your direct supervisor. Direct supervisor know you a lot better, but the CEO is the CEO of the company. You're thinking, let me go for the VIP over someone like the supervisor who knows me better. Not necessarily true, because a CEO may not know you and provide a very generic or AI created letter that's just not going to support you, even if they are considered a VIP. Obviously, there's some VIPs that are just like, wow. I had a client who got a letter of rec from the former Secretary of State of the United States because he gave a guest lecture and then taught, I think, a class at her university as an undergrad. And he kind of knew her, but it was a former Secretary of State. That's huge. Versus if she went to her professor. So sometimes you gotta make a decision, but again, at the end of the day, you're trying to get someone who is your greatest cheerleader that will write that recommendation for you. So again, err on the side of someone who knows you very well, that fits into the bucket of where they land in terms of professional, extracurricular, or academic, over someone who's just a VIP. All right. When to do it, 2 to 3 months out. Right now, we're kind of getting to crunch time, so you definitely need to be on top of this. But 2 to 3 months out, because you want to do it as a courtesy. You don't want to come to them like, hey, it's due tomorrow, it's due next week. You want to say, hey, listen, it's due in 2 months. I want to follow up with you. And the way I kind of cheat a little bit is I also tell them, as another pro tip, I didn't write it here, but other thing is you can give them kind of I wouldn't say a false deadline, but just kind of give them an earlier deadline. Say, listen, it's due mid-November, as opposed to saying it's due December 1st, because they may submit it on December 1st, and then it passes the deadline because the deadline is at 12 noon, I think, Eastern Standard Time, and they submit it end of day on December 1st. Now you're in trouble. So I'd say give them that courtesy, push them a little bit, follow up with them to make sure that they submit it on time. All right, so that's when, and then oopsies. Here's a summary of the main things, but let's say we have a quick question. Would it seem a little pushy if I gave them a brag sheet? Great question, and I'm going to get to that right here, as you can see, Anna. So here's a kind of summary of best practices. Short list recommenders. Spend some time writing at least all the people you believe would be great letters of rec. So don't have just 3, have like 5 or 6. 3 of those, maybe just touch base with them, say, hey, I may approach you for a letter of rec, just a heads up. And then just leave it at that. And then the other 3 who are the main ones, you kind of go, hard on the paint and push them to kind of get those letters done. If any of the other guys fall through, then you've got 3 backups, right? 2 to 3 backups. So I would just write a list and then kind of you almost use a matrix. Okay, is this person professional, academic, extracurricular, or an alum, right? Is this person how strong? What areas will they focus on? IQ, EQ, AQ. How long have they known me? 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, right? And then you could kind of, that's actually a good idea when you think about it, but design kind of a matrix like that, and then plot the person where they are, and then figure out which ones are the best. And then you obviously, in the end of the day, are going to say, okay, this one's the most accessible, they write the best, they know me the best, and they focus on IQ. And this one does this, AQ, and then kind of figure out who they're going to be. Approaching the recommender, find the time to ask them directly in person if possible. And then provide them, if you can, with a draft of your academic essays, at least here, your career goals essay, because I think that's going to help them a lot in terms of better understanding why you want to go to the Kennedy School. And then the areas of focus, there are your 6 C's, collaborative, compassionate, capable, committed, creative, and curious, to align the letter with qualities that HKS is looking for. HKS is looking for this. In fact, almost all schools, college or graduate, and professional environments are looking for these key qualities that really allow a person to stand out and be future ready and successful going forward, right? Creating a brag sheet, like Anna asked, is a good way of doing it too, is that you can write down some bullet points that pertain to that experience you had with that recommender, so that they know a little bit more about your background. So you can say, in your class, I achieved, I submitted these not midterms, but they're, your term assignments. Here's my capstone project. Here's my this. Remind them of what you achieved in there so that they can remember it. I got an A in your class, blah, blah, blah. If it was a professional, say, hey, for strengths, weaknesses, stuff like that, you can kind of like highlight some things. You say, these are just some thoughts for you to kind of consider. And then ensure that you have the correct email for the recommender, because what you don't want to do is have an email that's now obsolete. The school sends them an email to say, hey, this person selected you to be the recommender. Please submit the recommendation clicking this link. And then they never get the link. And then they hit you up, like 3 months later, and they'll be like, hey, Did you still want me to do this? And you're like, are you kidding me? The application got submitted. How did you not submit it? Right. I think the Kennedy School, if I remember correctly, will highlight and flag for you if your application is not complete and you don't have all your letters of rec in. So hopefully that solves that. But again, make sure that you have the right email for that person. And as a pro tip, I cannot remember if Kennedy School asks for this, but I don't know if they say, I think they do. Do you waive the right to review your letter of rec? And you always say yes. You waive the right. No, what is it? You waive the right to review. Yeah, you don't want to review the letter of recommendation, essentially. You don't want to say, yes, I want to see my letter of rec. Because if you say that, the school will think that you reviewed the letter of rec, collaborated on the letter of rec, which is a problem because it takes away from its core strength as an independent document coming from an independent person, providing an independent opinion of you that has nothing to do with you influencing it. All right. So you want to make sure that you do that. All right. So that's a summary of everything. Hopefully that answers your question also, and in terms of brag sheet, and just putting the main highlight, things that you want them to kind of focus on, whether it's strengths, weaknesses, goals, and so forth. All right. All right. I think that's the key things I want to kind of take away from here. Please, guys, ask any questions that you may have. Quickly, I'll give you a wrap up of who we are. We've been doing this for, I said, almost 18 years. My team is incredible. These guys have gone to some of the best schools in the world, including the Kennedy School as well. So you're really going to be in great hands. I love to showcase this graph. It's one of my pride and joys, because not only is this kind of a testament to other students, who, especially those who are reapplicants, where we help them get in when they come to us years later. But in this case, we had a group of students from a certain country that weren't doing very well. You could see they were getting 3, 3, 2, 2, 1, 0, 3, 1, and it was just a downward trend on the whole. And then we worked with them, and we were able to get 10 people in that following year to the Kennedy School, which was just unbelievable. And this is actually from one of the people that were there. As you can see, she really kind of was excited by the fact that we were able to help her take ideas that are clogged in her head almost, and provide clarity to them, to give her laser focus, gave her the confidence as she was going through the process, unearthed the details she didn't know existed, and that she went through this incredible cathartic transformation that produced great results, and she was admitted to the Kennedy School. And then here, a lot of writing here, but just kind of want to highlight this for you. Special time offer. If you email us as soon as we're done with this conversation today, we will give you a free consultation with yours truly, plus a free copy of the guidebook, which I'd love to share because we just produced a second edition of it that updates for the essays from this year. So you'll get a free copy of that and have a chance to talk to me about your profile for a free consultation. And then our final webinar of the series for the Kennedy School is an Ask Me Anything AMA on the Kennedy School application, financial aid and fellowships as a recipient of a fellowship, maximizing your experience at the Kennedy School, which I write a lot about in the book, and anything else that you may need and you may have questions about for the Kennedy School application. Feel free to jump on that webinar on October 30th. Thank you very much. We have a couple of extra minutes, but if we don't have any other questions, I will let you go. And I appreciate you being on the series with me. And I look forward to the last series in a week.